I've noticed working with many different companies over the years and also observing companies that many of their sales pipelines are set up with the wrong purpose in mind. And what I mean by that is a purpose of a sales pipeline is to manage a sales lead through the sales process to make sure that the customer, our sales lead, hopefully our client, actually walks away satisfied with the outcome, while at the same time we maximize our own outcome. So that's the purpose, I believe, of a sales pipeline. We only achieve this by actually placing the customer, our sales lead, center stage. Unfortunately, I've noticed that most sales pipelines are obsessed with the end. When are they going to close? When's that sales lead going to close? Now, what that actually does is it risks making your sales lead an anonymous opportunity flowing through and moving through your sales pipeline. Now, there's a number of techniques that you can use to avoid this. One of those is what I call the timeline technique, which is a technique I came up with, which actually allows you to break down the timeline into segments and determine the type of behavior that will occur or the type of behavior that the sales lead will follow at different times during their progress, from starting the project to the middle to the end when they close. In the beginning, they're more open to supporting you with discovery. In the middle, there's this realization time is running out, but they're still open to coaching them on how they can actually get to their end game. And the end, when they're completely absorbed and focused on execution. So the problem occurs is if you're focusing on the end game and it's at the beginning of the project or it's at the middle of the project, you're missing those critical milestones that you should be noticing and you should be picking up, mirroring your behavior, your sales team with your sales leader, guiding your sales team to actually mirror the behavior of the sales lead and those contacts within the sales lead. However, if you're just focused on the end game, when is this opportunity going to close? You're going to miss those key milestones. And that's why the timeline technique is so powerful, because it allows us to actually know where we are and the type of behavior that the sales lead and those within the sales lead company are going to be demonstrating. So like I say, to mirror it. Being obsessed with the end, focused on when we're going to actually close this sales lead, means we miss those milestones, but also it means that we miss and we lose the emotional connection that we should have to forecast accurately, that we should have with the sales lead flowing through our sales pipeline. What that does is it creates anonymous opportunities that instead flow through our sales pipeline. And that in itself is a major problem, because like I say, you lose the emotional connection, and it's that connection which allows you to forecast more accurately. But there's a lot more to it than that. To demonstrate the power of making it personal, I want to share with you a story I learned about a number of years ago, which I think is incredibly powerful. It's about a young radiologist called Yehonatan Turner. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. He's a young Israeli radiologist. Now, he decided to run an experiment, and with the permission of 300 patients, he attached their photo to their radiology scans. He gave those scans to a group of radiologists. Now, it's important to note here that those radiologists did not know what Turner's intent was. They just saw that there was radiology scans from 300 patients that included their photo. Now, what those radiologists reported back was this sense, this feeling of a closer emotional contact and a closer emotional feeling with those patients. What separates an exceptional radiologist from the average radiologist is to find abnormalities that they haven't been asked to look for. We call those incidental findings. Now, this same skill is what separates the exceptional salespeople from the average salesperson. The ability to find incidental findings that they weren't looking for or they were not instructed to find from the outset. Now, in sales, we often get involved with a prospect, with a sales lead, and we join a buying process. We think we're in a sales process, but we often find ourselves into getting involved in a buying process. And our skill is, how do we actually move from a buying process, take more control, and step into a sales process? And that's what separates the exceptional salespeople from the average salespeople. What they're doing is that the procurement departments, the buyers, that they're leveling their playing field. That's what a buying process does, so that they can get the best price. The exceptional salespeople, what they do is they create an uneven playing field. So how do they do that? Well, they actually find those incidental findings. They become problem finders. And that allows them to gain the competitive advantage. The competitive advantage over those that they're competing with, who are actually involved in a buying process, whereas the exceptional salespeople, the exceptional sales leaders, find ways of actually stepping out of that and moving the buyer into their own sales process. It's a phenomenally powerful skill. It's a skill that I run through and explain how we can do it within many of the sales programs that we run. So we need to become problem finders. Being a problem finder allows us to move from a buying process and move the buyer into our selling process. But how do we do that? We do it by making our sales pipeline more personal. So to demonstrate how we do it, I'm going to return back to Turner's experiment. Now what he did 3 months later, and bearing in mind this group of radiologists are scanning and they're reviewing radiology scans, many of them every single day. So when they were presented with the same radiology scans, but this time there was no picture, there was no photo. They didn't notice that they were the same radiology scans that they actually reviewed 3 months earlier. Now here was the surprise. Those same scans, because there was no photo on them, they found 80% less incidental findings compared to when they actually reviewed those exact same scans that had a photo. Now that story for me, and I'm sure for yourself, demonstrates the power of making it personal. So what we have to do is focus on making our sales pipeline personal. What was occurring with the radiologists was that they were less meticulous. They'd lost that emotional connection that the photo had actually generated for them. And it's that emotional connection that the sales pipeline has to help us develop and build. It is also the skill that the exceptional sales reps, the exceptional sales teams and leaders have and nurture within their teams. So going back to Turner's experiment again, having found this insightful finding that 80% less incidental findings were picked up, he mentioned in an article that goes back, I believe, to 2008, so this is a number of years ago, he mentioned in the Daily Science that you have to approach patients as a human and not an anonymous case study. And that offers us a valuable lesson to our sales pipelines. To be more competitive, we have to make our sales pipeline competitive. We have to make our sales pipeline personal, more personal than it is now. By making it personal, we can improve the accuracy of our sales forecast accuracy. And also we can increase the value of what we're actually selling because it's perceived as being more valuable. So to be more competitive, we have to make our sales pipelines more personal. So if you're interested in what we've just talked about, there's a lot of information on our Knowledge Hub that's on our website. Have a look around that. But in particular, after this, there's a link to our sales pipeline guide. and it provides a lot of insight and a lot of guidance on how to improve how you manage your sales pipelines.